Good to see you. Welcome back. Cross-examination.
Good morning, Senator. How are you? Good morning. Okay, just to follow up on a few things that you were asked yesterday. Your job is to promote the police department, correct?
Yes.
Are you also a liaison between the police department and the media, whether it's print or film?
Yes.
Okay. And prior to working at the Boynton Beach Police Department, where did you work?
I was a reporter at the Palm Beach Post.
And do you have any formal training in journalism?
Yes, I graduated from Syracuse University's Newhouse School of Public Communications.
So was everyone at the Boynton Beach Police Department proud that they were able to prevent the murder of Michael DiPolito?
Yes.
The objection to the relevance we approve.
You disregard the last
What's the purpose of using social media in your job?
We use social media to engage the community, to educate them, inform them, and feature the heroic work that our officers do every day.
And when you say social media, what different forms do you use?
We use YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're also using Periscope, Facebook Live, Ustream.
Okay, and is this a way to get the public involved?
Absolutely.
Has this use helped the department in solving crimes?
Yes, it has.
Has it created does it help create a rapport between your police department, Boynton Beach Police Department, and the community it serves?
Yes.
Do other police departments do the same thing?
Yes, they do.
Does it assist you in community policing?
Absolutely.
When officers are investigating cases, do they come to you and ask for your help in getting this on social media to help solve their crime?
Yes.
And is the public's assistance often vital in solving crimes?
Yes.
So the jury understands, as a public information officer, you also deal with public records requests. And so the jury understands when someone does a public records request, are you required to disclose what your department has?
Yes.
Are there certain parameters around that?
Yes.
But in general, in the state of Florida, is pretty much everything subject to disclosure?
There are a few exemptions, but for the most part, everything is open.
Now, what videos did you post in this case?
Just the one video of the staged crime scene.
So there's been discussion of, are you aware of a video that was filmed at the mobile gas station on Gateway Boulevard between the confidential informant and the defendant?
Yes.
Did you ever post that video?
No.
To your knowledge, did your department post that video?
No.
So can someone come to your department in the media, request a copy of that, and post it online?
Yes.
If things, if something showed up on the Boynton Beach Police Department's YouTube page, are they often linked there from other postings? Does that question make sense?
Say that again?
So, okay, so the jury understands. I don't even know that I understand. With YouTube channels, can anyone start a YouTube channel?
Yes.
And can anyone post what they want? if I created a YouTube channel and posted a video, could I then somehow link it to your police department's YouTube channel?
No.
Do you all ever post videos that maybe are on somebody else's channels?
Not necessarily post, but we might share them.
Okay, so if you share something, does it then show up on your page too?
Not necessarily on YouTube, but on other social medias.
Okay,
But we will sometimes, if they're on our YouTube channel, we will sometimes post videos of television shows that highlight our agency.
okay, so I believe yesterday there was a defense exhibit shown to you. I don't know that I wrote it down. Hang on one second. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you what's in evidence. This is Defense Exhibit 15. This was a screenshot you described of your Boynton Beach Police Department YouTube page, right?
Yes.
Okay, and on the bottom of here, there's the video of the staged crime scene. Yes?
Yes.
And then below that, it says BBPD on True TV's top 25 most shocking. Is this what you mean, that you all sometimes will share or post if a TV show puts something on?
Yes.
Okay, so this video, that's a video in the interrogation room, did you post that personally on your YouTube page?
The video from the interrogation room, no. I posted video of the episode of True TV's top 20 most shocking.
Okay, and you were asked yesterday that these show up on the home page. Does it appear from this screenshot that there was actually a search done of the defendant's last name?
Yes.
Okay, so if I went on your webpage and I typed in a search term, say, this case, would it bring up all the videos that you all have tagged for it?
Yes.
So while that's showing on that screenshot, does that necessarily mean that that's on the Boynton Beach Police Department's YouTube homepage?
No, generally what's on the homepage are the most recent videos that we have uploaded.
Okay. You were given a policy yesterday about the media directives, and you said that it's outdated. Is there been a change in the 2008 policy?
Well, the policy I was given yesterday was a 2000 policy under a different police chief. There was a 2008 policy, and it has not changed since, no.
Are there changes between the 2008 policy and the 2000 policy?
Some, yes.
What are those changes?
I don't remember, but I know that there were changes because I helped formulate the new policy
Okay.
when I was hired.
And in this case, when you posted the video of the staged crime scene on your YouTube channel, was that at the direction of your police chief?
Yes, I was authorized by him.
I should say your then police chief, right?
Yes,
He's
not
since
anymore.
retired?
He has since retired, yes.
Okay. The emails that were discussed with you yesterday, I believe there was an email dated May 19th of 2009. If you need to look at them, just let me know, okay? That said it was between you and Brian Collins, right?
Yes,
And he was the contact of the Cops TV show?
yes.
Now, it sounded like to me that Cops had already been there. Is that correct?
Yes, they had.
Do you remember what the date was of when Cops was there for the very first time?
I don't remember the exact date. It was in April sometime,
April of,
2009.
okay. And explain to the jury how that works. Do they come and go? Are they there constantly? What happens?
So Cops had been in the area filming with another law enforcement agency, and because they were in our area, they wanted to do like a sample ride along with us and get a feel for the city of Boynton Beach and the types of calls for service that our officers respond to. So over several days, they did ride with us, and they were actually able to get footage to then be aired in an episode. And it was based on their experience with us at that time that they decided
Best evidence, Your Honor. And hearsay.
Overruled.
Go ahead.
that they decided that they wanted to come back in the summer for their next season and ride for the full 8 weeks.
Okay. There also was an email that the original start date, again, was supposed to be August 11th of 2009, correct?
Yes,
And that got moved up to August 4th of 2009, correct?
yes,
Was it the decision of the Point Beach Police Department to move it up, or cops?
cops,
Foundation, she said she wasn't at the meeting.
Overruled.
Go ahead.
cops.
Okay. So it wasn't the Point Beach Police Department saying, we've got this going on, hurry up and get here. They had planned to be there on the 4th.
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
No, it was not. They had planned to be there at that time.
And would it be accurate to say that prior to Mohammed Shahada walking into the Point Beach Police Department on July 31st of 2009, cops already had the plan to be at your department and film on August 4th, 2009?
Yes,
There was an email you were asked about where you're going back and forth with Mr. Collins, and you said, you were asking him about the scheduling, and you said the chief wants to have a big viewing party for the first one. You're trying to find out when it was. What did that email mean?
as I had said, they previously rode with us, and there were 2 episodes that they said we had reviewed and approved, and they were going to air. And the chief wanted to know when the first one was going to air because he wanted to have a viewing party for it.
Okay. Was that the episode involving Dalia DiPolito?
No, it was not.
Okay. Isn't it true that the episode of Dalia DiPolito didn't in fact air?
Your Honor.
It's cross-examination. She's entitled to it. Overruled.
Isn't it true that the episode of Cops featuring Dalia DiPolito did not air for the first time until September 24th, 2011?
Objection waived, Road Judge.
Yes.
Ma'am, was September 24th of 2011 the date that the Cops episode first featuring Dalia DiPolito first aired?
Yes.
And we talked a second ago about public records. So the jury understands. Can a public records request, let me give you a hypothetical. Tiger Woods, you aware he was recently arrested for DUI?
Yes.
And are you aware, did you personally witness on television the videos that were taken by police during his investigation?
Yes.
Obviously, they came out right after his arrest. How does something like that happen, to your knowledge, in your position?
The media makes a public records request for those videos, and that's how they obtain them, and they end up on television.
Thank you. 1 second. I have no further questions. Thank you
All
very much.
right, redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Slater.
Good morning.
Just a few questions. Let's talk about Tiger Woods. There was no staged crime scene of Tiger Woods, correct?
Correct.
That was just a real crime. He was pulled over, and there was dash cam video on the patrol car, correct?
Yes.
Isn't it true that with respect to Tiger Woods, there weren't 15 police officers setting up a fake crime scene and then calling Tiger Woods and saying, hey, come on over here, right? Isn't that true?
I don't know. I wasn't there.
And you said earlier that other police departments post videos on YouTube. Is that what you said?
They use social media, yes.
No, but do other police departments have their own YouTube channel?
I don't know.
Do other police departments post on social media staged crime scenes?
I don't know.
Do other police departments post on social media video footage during a pending criminal investigation?
I don't know.
Do other police departments use taxpayer money to create fake crime scenes?
I don't know.
Now, you just said that you believe cops changed the schedule, correct?
Yes.
I thought you said yesterday that you were not in the meeting with Sergeant Sheridan and the cops folks about the schedule. Is that true?
I was not in that meeting, but she was asking about the schedule of when they were originally coming.
Okay, but if you were not in the meeting with the cops folks and Sergeant Sheridan, isn't it true that you don't know what was discussed in that meeting, correct?
Overall is that question.
I think you're confusing two issues because she was asking me about cops changing the schedule of when they were actually coming, which was done with me over email.
Well, no, what I'm talking about is cops. I thought you said cops changed the schedule to go film Dahlia DiPolito.
No, that's not what she was asking me.
Okay, well, who changed the schedule to film Dahlia DiPolito? Boynton Beach Police Department?
No, I was not in that meeting. What she was asking me was who changed the schedule of when they were originally coming. And I arranged that with Brian Collins.
Okay, I appreciate you clarifying that, but thank you. My question now, though, is isn't it true then that the Boynton Beach Police Department changed the schedule with cops so that cops could film the staged crime scene involving Dahlia DiPolito?
Objection, speculation based on prior answer.
Overall.
I don't know. I was not in the meeting.
Just a couple other questions. Miss Laurie had asked you whether you were proud about the Boynton Beach Police Department. Is everybody at the Boynton Beach Police Department proud of the fact that they destroyed the Chili's audio tape?
Objection,
Sustained.
move to strike his question.
There was no answer, but disregard the question.
Everybody at Boynton Beach PD proud of the fact we're missing at least 25 audio recordings of phone calls?
Objection, may we approach?
Yes. The
I'm
objection.
through, Your Honor. I'll withdraw the question.
Approach. All right, Ms. Slater, you may step down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Defense ready to call the next witness.
Yes, Your Honor. We'll call Tim Williams, please.
Okay, Mr. Williams.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Williams.
Good morning.
Are you a former police officer?
I am.
Tell the jury about your experience as a police officer.
Sure. I'm a retired senior detective supervisor from the Los Angeles Police Department, where I served with the department for a total of 29 years and 5 months. Of my time in the department, over 26 years was dedicated to criminal and administrative investigations. My assignments of work included patrol. When I got through the academy in 1974, I went to Patrol Division. And from there, I went to Employee Opportunity and Development Division, which were the responsibility of the recruitment efforts for the department. From there, I went back to patrol and became a training officer and ended up in detectives. I started as a detective trainee, took an exam, and was promoted to detective, and where I stayed throughout my career. I was a detective, detective supervisor, and senior detective supervisor. I worked assignments such as robbery, homicide, crimes against persons, domestic violence, narcotics, auto theft, juvenile, burglary, and also I was on the administrative side. I was an adjutant. An adjutant is aide to a commanding officer at the division level and at the staff level. When I say the staff level, I mean the chief's level. In Detective Services Group, which had citywide functional detective functions for the department. I was also instrumental in creating the domestic violence program for LAPD. I ran the first pilot program for that, and the procedures that I suggested and put in place or in place today. So those are that is my background. I retired in 2003, opened my own private investigation firm where I'm a police procedure and use of force expert in both state and federal court.
Mr. Williams, what was the significance of being assigned to the Robbery Homicide Division at the Los Angeles Police Department?
Well, Robbery Homicide Division is the elite division or investigative division for LAPD. And they're supposed to be the best of the best who work that division. And I worked there for 4 years. I was assigned to Robbery Special. And in that division, we were responsible for investigating citywide robberies. We also conducted citywide lineups for other detective functions throughout the department. And we taught, the division taught in detective schools and continuing education areas of investigative importance that other detectives throughout the department had to deal with.
And the jury might be wondering, you're here from California, from a former police officer at LAPD. Is there some significant difference in general police practices in Florida relative to California?
No. When I was with the department, I worked with law enforcement agencies from different parts of the country. Investigations are investigations. I worked with homicide detectives in New York, Detroit, Oklahoma, when I worked child abuse, Kentucky. So the law enforcement issues are the same. Policies are pretty much the same. Procedures may differ from agency to agency. For instance, here in Florida, sorry, and as it relates to informant investigations, the policy is that you have to document your activities with the informants that you deal with. And they have within 5 business days to document that in the file. Well, in California, you have to get that done by the end of the business day. So the same policy, different procedure. One is 5 business days, and another you have to get it done before you go home. So the policies or the law enforcement is pretty much the policies are pretty much the same. I've also trained with them, different managers and mid-managers and supervisors throughout the country in West Point leadership program that I attended when I was with the department. We studied law enforcement policies and procedures throughout the country. So they are all basically the same. Again, as I stated, procedures may vary from agency to agency.
While you worked with the Robbery Homicide Division at the Los Angeles Police Department, did you have occasion to collaborate with law enforcement agencies in other states?
From my recollection, we from time to time we did. They called us based upon investigations, and we collaborated with them as to how we did and what they should be doing in certain high-profile cases.
And did you do any training of police officers at the LAPD?
I taught one class, or taught a class, and in the police academy for detective personnel and vice personnel as relates to photographic lineups. And that's one class I taught, which was post. When I say post, that's peace officer standards and training. That's the criterion that's used in California. And each state has their own criterion as relates to certification as to law enforcement agencies, and I taught under that.
So were you actually a detective at one point at the police department?
I was a detective, detective supervisor, and a senior detective supervisor.
So as a detective, you were actually in the trenches?
I was.
Not to suggest you weren't in the trenches above that, but as a detective, can you just generally tell us what some types of cases you worked on?
Well, as a detective, I worked homicides, I worked robberies, I worked crimes against persons, I worked child abuse murders. As a detective supervisor, I worked the same thing, and as a senior detective supervisor, I worked robberies and robbery specials in robbery homicide division, as well as an administrative assignment. In those assignments, you get called out in the middle of the night. You go out there working, doing your investigations. You work with other entities within law enforcement and other agencies within law enforcement to get the task done.
And just tell the jury generally what a detective supervisor, that's a bad question. Tell the jury generally, please, what your job duties were as a detective supervisor.
A detective supervisor is just that. You're a detective supervisor. You have subordinates under you that you train. You monitor their activities. You assist their or direct their investigations, and at times you evaluate them in their annual evaluation reports. A senior detective supervisor, at the level I was at, you ran units. You worked certain staff assignments that were unique to that rank. As a senior detective supervisor, you outranked the sergeant rank altogether from the lowest to the highest. And you were basically an expert in the area of investigations, and that's what I did.
Just so we're clear, though, as a detective supervisor, were you actually involved in ongoing criminal investigations?
I was, depending on the assignment, I was.
So would you be giving direction to the actual detectives in the investigation?
I would, as well as the patrol that were out there on the scene, the first responders as well.
And what were your general job duties as a senior detective supervisor?
Senior detective supervisor, I had functional supervision over certain robbery problems within the city and citywide. We assisted and directed and guided other divisional detectives throughout the department as it relates to certain investigative procedures. We monitored if there was a series of robberies going on, then we monitor that, and we took over that series. And a series may have gone outside of LAPD. It may have gone to other outlining agencies as well, and we corresponded and worked with those agencies as relate to those cases.
And during your careers in LAPD, detective supervisor and senior detective supervisor, did you have occasion to work with informants?
I did.
And also, what exactly did you do or what was the significance of creating the domestic violence program at LAPD?
Well, I looked at at the time it was crimes against persons, and crimes against persons deal with assaults, attempted murders, and domestic violence. And the division I was working at in California, or in Los Angeles, we call them divisions. In some areas, we call them precincts. So I'm using the terminology from California. In the division I was assigned to at that time, I looked at the domestic violence issue as it related to crimes against persons persons, and I initiated a study and found that over 60% of the cases we were getting in were domestic violence related. So I wrote a proposal, set it up to the chain of command, went to the chief. The chief thought it was a good idea, and I suggested a reorganization of the detective function. So before, with anything in law enforcement, you have to have a temporary pilot program to see if the program will work. So I ran the department's program for about, I think, 3 or 4 months, or maybe 6 months. And I kept my stats and sent my findings up to the chain of command. The chief thought it was a good idea to reorganize the detective function. He sent that proposal to the police commission. The police commission voted unanimously to reorganize the detective function, and it gave a singular focus to domestic violence where it wasn't before.
Can you tell the jury briefly about a couple of your major achievements?
As it relates to of what?
Well, you were the local president of the Oscar Joel Bryant
Yes.
Association. What's that?
Yes. I was president of the Oscar Joel Bryant Association. It's a black law enforcement association of Southern California. We were dealing with the issues of upward mobility within the department. Also, I was a member of the National Black Police Association, and I was on the national board of directors and the regional information officer. And we dealt with, again, issues of upward mobility as relates to minorities and females within law enforcement. And those are the issues we dealt with, and we made positive strides in that particular area. Also, on my leadership, we dealt with a burglary problem. We got a grant that was initiated to the organization, and we monitored the burglary problem within a local division. And with our input, we saw a decrease in burglaries in that particular division. So those are the things that I did as president and as national board member for the National Black Police Association.
And didn't you also manage over 30,000 members nationwide?
That's what we did at the national level, yes.
And can you tell the jury how many times you've testified in a state or federal court?
In my pre-retirement, I've testified hundreds of times. And since I've retired, I've testified 170 times in both state and federal court, as well as in depositions as it relates to police procedure and use of force issues.
Well, how many times, just to break it down for the jury, when excuse me, when you said pre-retirement, does that mean you testified in court as a LAPD police officer? As
a police officer, detective supervisor, and senior detective supervisor.
And then, in terms of testifying in court, since your retirement, can you tell the jury how many times you have testified in court in a criminal proceeding?
If I could look at my notes, Your Honor.
Just for a refresher recollection.
Sure. In criminal trials, I've testified since retirement 64 times in criminal trials. This makes my 65th time.
And have you and I ever worked together before?
No.
This
No.
was the first time that I ever called your office to ask you to evaluate a criminal investigation, true?
This is correct.
And as part of your consulting business, you're required to get paid, right?
I'm paid for my
You
time.
have to be paid for your time.
That's
right?
correct.
Now, does the fact that you are paid for your time in any way compromise the integrity of the opinions that you offer on a criminal investigation?
No, I evaluate the case myself, and I render my own opinions, and I consult with counsel as to my findings.
And have you ever been contacted by a lawyer, looked at a file, and said, I can't help you?
I have.
So by virtue of the fact that I had to pay you something, does that in any way get me any favors?
It does not.
And how much did I have to pay you to do an investigation and evaluation to come into court today?
My fees are $325 an hour.
What was the total amount that I had to pay you to do this?
If I can look at my notes, Your Honor, again.
You may refresh recollection.
$6,500.
That's something you shouldn't forget.
No, I should not forget it.
All right.
I just want to be accurate.
Now, tell the jury precisely what documentation you reviewed in connection with this engagement.
Again, Your Honor, if I can
You may refresh your.
Okay. I looked at the police reports that were generated in this particular case. I looked at the policies and procedures that I received as relates to media involvement and also informant involvement as well. I looked at depositions of different officers: George Imler, Chief Jeffrey Katz, that's K-A-T-Z, Detective Alex Marino, a witness Mohammed Shadea, Sergeant Paul Sheridan, and Frank P. Ranzi, R-A-N-Z, like in zebra, I-E.
You also reviewed a gentleman named Whitty Jean's deposition transcript.
Yes.
Did you listen to any of the audio recordings of phone calls made in the case?
I listened to some audio recordings and I observed some video.
Did you view the videotapes that were generated in the Dahlia Dippolito investigation?
I did.
Yes.
Mr. Williams, I'd like to show you a document that has been moved into evidence as Defense Exhibit 6. It's the 2007 directive from the Boynton Beach Police Department. May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, is that one of the documents you reviewed?
Excuse me. Yes.
And can you tell the jury what the significance of Exhibit 6 is?
What this is a policy as it relates to informants. It tells you how you are to manage them. It tells you how you are to document. It tells you how to activate, deactivate. Tells you what information to put into the informant file as it relates to the informant itself, background investigation, criminal activity, and so on and so forth, if there is any. And it kind of gives a encapsulated, kind of a detailed encapsulated approach on how to manage and control informants.
Yes.
In particular, I'd like to refer you to, it's paragraph 5C3 on page 3 of Exhibit 6. Can you please take a look at that? Can you read that sentence, please?
Sure. On Section 5, C, subsection 3 says, an informant will be deactivated when he or she no longer has the potential or the ability to furnish information or services of use to the public department, or excuse me, to the police department, when he or she is no longer willing to cooperate with the department, or when his or her cooperation has been determined to be unsatisfactory.
Okay, now I'm going to give you a couple facts that I want to ask you to accept as truthful in this case, and then I want you to tell me how those relate to the directive that you just read. I'd like you to accept as truthful in this case that Mohammed Shahade has said that he did not want to be involved in the Dahlia Dippolito investigation. Tell me the significance of that fact if proven truthful.
Mohammed Shadea is the informant, if I'm correct. And it says here, as I read before, when a person seems to be, their cooperation seems to be unsatisfactory, and the let me read it to you. It says, has the potential or the ability to furnish information to services of use for the police department, when he or she is no longer willing to cooperate with the department, or when he or she's cooperation has been determined to be unsatisfactory. Based upon your question you asked me, Mr. Shihada was unwilling to cooperate with the department, and he should have been deactivated as a confidential informant from the system.
So should the Boynton Beach PD have immediately deactivated Mr. Shahade if we can prove in this case, truthfully, that Shahade said he did not want to be involved in the investigation?
Yes.
And why, in your estimation, should the confidential informant be removed from the investigation if he or she has conveyed to the police department that they do not want to be involved in an undercover operation?
That's a mere fact that they're no longer cooperative, they're not willing to be involved, and the policy is very clear that they should be deactivated.
Let me give you another fact that I'd like to accept as truthful, and if we're able to prove this fact to the jury is truthful, I want you to tell me how this Boynton Beach PD directive impacts this fact. The fact I want you to accept as truthful is Mohammed Shahade says that the Boynton Beach Police Department pressured him into remaining on the undercover investigation. What's the significance of that fact, if proven truthful?
Well, if he's pressured to do something, in my opinion, he's coerced to be involved in something that he doesn't want to be involved in. And what you're having is something that may be illegal in nature, forcing someone to do something, and the information that you get from that person can be tainted. And whereas they're being forced to do something and they're doing it to please the person that's forced them to do it, here being the police agency. So in my opinion, that anything that comes of that is in fact tainted, and it goes against policies and procedure, and in my opinion is illegal.
Well, any evidence that comes from that is unreliable, isn't it?
That is correct.
I'd like to have you accept this fact as truthful, that Mohammed Shahade will come into the courtroom this afternoon and tell the jury under oath that the Boynton Beach Police Department threatened to prosecute him unless he remained on the Dahlia Dippolito undercover operation. You have that fact?
I do.
Tell me what the significance of that fact is if it's proven truthful in this case.
Again, you can't coerce someone to do something, and you can't force or you can't threaten them with arrest for them not doing it. Again, it's illegal. It taints the investigation, and anything that comes from that, in my opinion, is tainted. You're forcing an individual to do something, and the information that they will provide is something that will please the department to further move forward in their investigation. So to me, that's unreliable, totally unreliable.
The evidence is.
Correct.
And the evidence isn't credible, is it?
Excuse me?
The evidence isn't credible.
No, it's not.
Is it ever good police practices to threaten a confidential informant with prosecution unless they stay on an investigation?
No, you don't do that. You're taught in law enforcement all across the country. You don't do that. You don't coerce anyone. You don't threaten anyone. And there's ramifications for that.
It's illegal, isn't it?
It's illegal, yes.
And doesn't it create a motivation for the confidential informant to behave a certain way then?
It does.
Can you explain to the jury what
Yeah.
you mean by that?
It forces the informant or the person that you're coercing or threatening to give information to you that you want to hear. And it may not be a factual information. And from there, anything that comes of that is tainted. And if it's proven in court, all that information is ruled basically inadmissible and is thrown out. So it's illegal.
Yes, you may. Objection is sustained. The jury will disregard the last question and answer.
Mr. Williams, let me ask you a different way.
Sure.
If a confidential informant is threatened to be prosecuted and pressured to remain on an undercover investigation, do you have an opinion as to whether any evidence generated after that is reliable or not?
Based upon my background, education, and experience, and the training that I received with the prosecutorial agencies in California, the answer is that information is tainted.
Is it reliable?
No, it's not.
Let's talk a little bit about a confidential informant packet. Are you familiar with that?
I am.
What is a confidential informant packet?
It's a package that's put together. It documents the time that the officer or officers or detectives, not officers but detectives, were involved with the person, and the person is being utilized in an investigation. In there, you have all the information on that person, his name, background, if there's any criminal background. They run his name through NCIC to see if he or she has any criminal background, any pending cases, and also to check whether they've been used before in this manner. So it's a confidential file that's maintained. It's maintained in certain offices within the department or departments.
Right, before I get into what we call a CI packet, right? So if I
Yeah.
say CI packet, may we have an understanding that I'm referring to the confidential informant packet?
Sure, it's called different things, different places. It's all the same.
I jumped ahead of myself a little bit. Before I get to that CI packet, I'd like you to accept as truthful this next fact, and then tell me what the significance of it is. If I'm able to prove to the jury that Mohammed Shahade will testify under oath that the first phone call that he makes to the Boynton Beach Police Department is to report to the police department, in part, that Miss DiPolito has been domestically abused. Tell me the significance of that fact.
Well, that's important in the fact that there's a possible domestic violence situation that may be ongoing, and what they should have done is caused an investigation to take place on that by sending a police unit out to the location, and I use the term welfare check, to see what's going on with Ms. DiPolito as relates to the area of domestic violence, and report back to detectives. And if there was some domestic violence issues that were there or pending, make the appropriate reports and the proper notifications, and get that investigation started.
Just so we're clear, the Boynton Beach Police Department should have made contact with Dalia DiPolito if it's truthful that Shahade reported domestic abuse.
That is correct.
Should the Boynton Beach Police Department have made contact with Mike DiPolito as well?
Well, if he's there, you figure out what's going on. They will talk to both of them separately to find out what's going on. If there was some areas of domestic violence, they'll make a recommendation. They would maybe even suggest getting a temporary restraining order if the situation involved.
Now, if I tell you the following fact and you accept as truthful, tell me whether you have any criticism of the Boynton Beach PD. Once you would accept this fact as truthful, that no detective from the Boynton Beach Police Department reached out to either Dalia DiPolito or Mike DiPolito to investigate the report of domestic abuse. Would you be critical of that fact if proven truthful?
I would.
Why so?
Because as I stated in my just recent testimony here, is that they should have sent a unit out to make sure to corroborate or not if in fact a domestic violence situation was going on.
Okay, if we're able to prove as truthful that Mohammed Shahade also communicated to the Boynton Beach PD that he didn't think this was a serious issue, and he asked the Boynton Beach PD Police Department to simply call Dalia DiPolito, what's the importance of that fact?
Well, whether he thinks it's serious or not, domestic violence is serious, and they should have gone out to check and see if Ms. DiPolito was in fact a victim of domestic violence, and and cause the investigation to be started and take it from there.
Would you be critical of Detective Alex Marino if we prove in this case that he made upwards of 10 phone calls to convince Mohammed Shahade to come into the police department to participate in the undercover investigation?
Well, it's if you make 10 phone calls to get someone to come in to become an informant or to be involved in this investigation, that tells me that the person wasn't receptive to come in.
Why is it important if the individual who made the initial report is not receptive to coming into the police department?
Well, you can't, again, as I testified earlier about the policy, is that if a person is not receptive or willing to be a part, then number one, he shouldn't be activated as an informant, and if he is, he should be deactivated because any information that he or she will give, in particular cases that he, in my opinion, would be tainted based upon the fact that he's not willing to participate.
Would you be critical of the Boynton Beach Police Department if I tell you the following fact is truthful? That Mr. Mohammed Shahade will testify that he felt like Detective Marino was harassing him.
Yes, I would fault the department for that.
And why would you be critical of that?
You don't harass someone to get a end result. Again, that's in my opinion, that's a form of coercion, as I stated earlier, and it will taint the investigation.
Before we get to the CI packet, let me give you another fact and ask you to accept this fact as truthful, that Mohammed Shahade actually does physically go into the police department on August 1st now, 2009, and before he is even interviewed by anybody at Boynton Beach PD, they take his keys and they go and install video cameras inside his vehicle without interviewing him. Is that an important fact?
You don't do that.
Okay, why do you not do that?
Well, why would you install video equipment into a car when you haven't even done an investigation yet and you haven't heard what he has to say?
Well, why do you have to hear what he has to say before you put a camera in his car?
Well, you got to know what you have if it's credible, and you got to do your own independent investigation on that. And it's like me coming to the police station and say, "Oh, hold on, Mr. Williams, let me have your keys to your car," and they wire my car up. Well, why are you wiring my car up when I haven't even talked to you? So it just doesn't make any sense. It's something that is not done.
Well, doesn't that suggest an ulterior motive?
It suggests to me that that the Boynton Police Department had their own plans, that he was going to get him to do something that he hadn't agreed to do yet, and that they hadn't even talked to him as to what all he had to tell them as it relates to this case.
So now we've got Shahade inside the police station, and this is his first interview with the Boynton Beach PD. Do you have any opinion on whether that first interview between Shahade and the Boynton Beach PD should have been recorded?
It should have been recorded. From my analysis of the discovery that I reviewed, they interviewed him, I think, for about an hour or two, and then after that, then they recorded his interview. To me, that's probably problematic.
Why is that problematic?
Because it gives the impression that you're getting a story that you want to get, then you record it. They should have recorded him from the time he was in that interview room until he left. That should have been recorded that way. It's in my opinion, the recording is very questionable. I don't know what happened before the recording, if he was coerced or forced to make the statements he was making, because it wasn't recorded and it should have been recorded.
And the importance of recording that is so we're not left with any doubt.
That is correct.
And you want to eliminate any kind of coercion, right?
That is correct.
You want to eliminate speculation, right?
That is correct.
What's the importance of having corroborating evidence in a criminal investigation like this?
Well, when you corroborate or you confirm something, if a person makes a statement, as a detective, you have to go out and do your own investigation and prove or to show what that person is saying is in fact correct, and it's called corroboration. And without, if you have an interview that wasn't recorded, then you have that same alleged same interview that it was recorded an hour or two later, then to me that's questionable. What was being said first? Was there any coercion or forcement of the statement made, or is the person parroting what the detectives were telling him to say?
Would it have been let me withdraw the question. If I tell you the following fact and accept it as truthful, tell me if you think it's important. If Mohammed Shahade comes in here this afternoon and tells the jury under oath that the police officers were laughing during this initial interview that wasn't recorded, is that an important fact?
Yeah. Is he telling jokes, or what was he doing? I mean, that's very important. I like to know what was said from the time he got to the station until memorializing everything as it relates to the initial contact up into his statement.
So now let's talk about the CI packet now. So Shahade's at the police station, August 1st, 2009. Police department takes his keys. They're wiring his car for video footage. They now have done 2 sets of interviews. First interview not recorded, second interview recorded. You with me?
I'm with you.
Right. Now we're going to talk about the CI packet. I want you to accept as truthful that Mohammed Shahade will come in here under oath and tell the jury that only a very short amount of time, maybe a minute or two, was spent by anybody at Boynton Beach PD explaining to Mr. Shahade what a CI packet is and what the significance of it is. Do you have a problem with that?
Yes, it's a very involved process. You have to tell the person what's involved and what they're getting involved with. You got to let them know that that we will try to keep their name confidential, but there's no guarantee that's going to happen. That there's instructions as to what they're supposed to do, and as outlined in this particular order here. And it takes time to do that, and then they have to sign off on it, and then that's put in their file.
Well, why is it important for a police department to explain to a confidential informant what's in a CI packet?
Because it's important that they know that when they get involved in this, there's a lot of times people want to work whatever cases they have on them off, and you can't make no promises on that. There are a lot of times where they may want to get paid, and there's no promises on that. There may be instances where hey, I want to tell you this, but I don't want to go to court. You can't make no guarantees on that. You got to be transparent with the presentation of what they're getting involved with, and in the package, and then what they have to sign is extremely laid out, and they have to read it for themselves, explain it to them, and again, it has to be completely transparent.
Well, do you believe the Boynton Beach Police Department, in particular Detective Alex Marino, was transparent if he told Mohammed Shahade, just sign the CI packet and you'll remain confidential? Nobody's going to find out about you.
That's not transparent.
Why is that not transparent?
Because you can't. Because you can't tell them that. Again, as I stated, and the order states that you will try to keep their name confidential, but there's no guarantee. And if the case comes to court, there are hearings that are dealt with on this particular area. They call in camera where the attorneys go back in the chambers with the judge, and they hash all this stuff out, and then make a determination as to whether this person will be put forth to the jury or to tell his or her story or not.
Would you have a problem if we're able to prove in this case that Shahade repeatedly tells Marino, I don't want anybody to know I'm involved in this, and Marino says, sign here and we'll make sure that nobody finds out about you?
That's yes, because it's a false promise.
False promise. Right. Now let's talk. Let's talk a little bit now about some phone calls that were made by Mohammed Shahade to Dahlia Dippolito. Are you with me? Now we're moving forward to some phone calls that, at the direction of Detective Marino.
I'm with you.
And you've listened to the recorded phone calls, correct?
I've listened to recorded phone calls. Right. Yes.
Did you come to learn during your evaluation of this investigation that there were additional phone calls that were made by Mohammed Shahade to Dalia DiPolito that were not recorded?
I have come to that knowledge, yes.
Would you be critical of the Boynton Beach Police Department if at least 25 phone calls, if I'm able to prove that fact, were made by Shahade to Dalia DiPolito and we have no audio recordings of those phone calls?
I'll be critical of that.
And why would you be?
Number one, there's two things based upon the issues in this particular case. Number one, I would have problems of Mr. Shahade initiating phone calls to Ms. DiPolito, in that I would have instructed him, you don't initiate any phone calls. If the phone calls come into you, you record them. I would tell him how to record it. You document it. I would give him a sheet that'll have the date and the time on it. And so it'll be documented as to when, the date and time they call, and then again, it will be corroborated with via search warrant of the phone records, and that's how that is done. Don't initiate any phone calls. If the phone calls come in, you document the date and time, and the detectives come, you get that documentation.
Why, in your estimation, is it important that Mohammed Shahade, the confidential informant, is not the one who's initiating the phone calls?
Based upon the issues in this particular case, you don't initiate the intent to someone else. The person who's trying to allegedly committing this act, or when this act to be committed, should be initiating the contacts and not having someone call them to give the idea, put an idea in their head. And so that, and again, you don't have someone initiate the phone calls. The person that's being looked at in question should be initiating the phone calls, and that should be documented.
All right, now let's just break it down for the jury quickly. Two types of phone calls. One is controlled, right? Controlled phone calls?
Yeah, a control.
Jury quickly with
Yeah.
controlled phone calls.
A controlled phone call is when I, as a detective, is sitting down with a member of the jury. You're sitting down, we're making a phone call. Well, you're doing it under my control, and I'm listening to it, and you're making, the phone calls coming in, and those controlled calls. And that's how that terminology comes into play.
Would you have a problem if we prove that Detective Marino was repeatedly encouraging Mohammed Shahade to call Dalia DiPolito to get her to meet with Mohammed Shahade?
Yes.
Why so?
Well, again, you putting the idea into Ms. DiPolito's head to initiate this contact. She's not initiating the contact. The contact's being initiated to her, and that's kind of, in my opinion, that's counterproductive to any investigation. If you're trying to put a case on somebody, and they're doing something, you expect them to initiate the phone calls. You're looking for them to initiate the phone calls. And again, let me say this: something like this, the state attorney should have been involved in this from the very beginning to make sure that this stuff was managed and conducted properly, and that wasn't done either.
Should all of the controlled phone calls made by Shahade to Ms. DiPolito have been recorded?
Yes.
Why do we want all of the controlled phone calls between Shahade and DiPolito to be recorded?
Well, you want to hear what the target or what Ms. DiPolito is saying or was saying, and not only with the controlled phone calls, but with all the calls. And you want to be able to corroborate all this activity that's going on. So when the prosecution files this case, that all your T's are crossed and all your I's are dotted, that will have the elements of the case in play. Right,
because if you have all the audio recordings prosecution might have more evidence, right?
That's correct.
Or they might have no evidence,
That's correct.
and we wouldn't be left guessing, right?
That's correct.
All right, let's talk briefly about uncontrolled phone calls now. Can you tell the jury briefly about what the uncontrolled phone calls are?
The uncontrolled phone calls are when the calls are made or received to the informant, as I talked about earlier, where the calls should have been recorded and documented, the date and time. Excuse me. And those are uncontrolled because the detectives are not there to monitor it. And if there's an attorney that's embedded in the case, or state's attorney that's embedded in the case, they're not there to give direction as well. So the thing is that the person or the informant is given direction, explicit direction as to what they're supposed to do, and those are unmonitored calls.
Right, so just so we're clear, the jury heard Detective Marino say, hey, I'm not going to be with Shahade 24/7. I don't go home and, brush my teeth with this guy at night. He's going to be on his own, right?
That's correct.
So what should Detective Marino have done to direct Mr. Shahade as to whether he makes any phone calls outside Marino's presence? What should Marino have told Shahade in that regard?
Detective Marino should have told Shahade, number one, do not call Mr. DiPolito, number one. Number two, if she calls, or will you receive any calls coming in, because a lot of times you get calls that may not be related to it, and then you still document it and it says unrelated. You document that, and if she calls, you document that, and you put down there, Ms. DiPolito call. So the thing is that he should have been given explicit directions of what to do, not to initiate the phone calls. If the phone calls come in, you document it, and that's all phone calls. It may be related or unrelated to the case. And if it's unrelated, you put down there unrelated, and if it's related, then you put down who called.
So the optimal police procedure would have been for Marino to tell Shahade to not make any phone calls to Dalia DiPolito outside of his presence.
That is correct.
So if we're able to prove in this case that Detective Marino never told Mohammed Shahade to not make phone calls to Dalia DiPolito when he's home or at work, would you be critical of that?
If he told her not to? Told him not to, you mean?
So if he didn't tell
Okay.
Mr. Shahade to not make phone calls to Dalia DiPolito when he's at home?
Yeah, I would be critical if he didn't tell her that. Tell him that.
Now, we asked Detective Marino some questions about whether he could have given a recording device to Mohammed Shahade when Shahade wasn't with Marino at all times. And if I'm able to prove, or as truthful, that Marino said, yeah, I had a digital recorder I could have given him, but I didn't give it to him. Would you be critical of that?
Yes, he should have given it to him.
Why should Detective Marino have given Mohammed Shahade a digital recorder?
Because you want to have the investigation continue even though you're not there. You want to corroborate all the facts that, in fact, that there was an attempt to do what's alleged to have been done, and you got to have proof for all that. And if she's calling, making arrangements, and doing all those things, you got to record it. And the state's attorney needs that information to put their case on.
So tell the jury, though, the different types of recording devices that Detective Marino could have given Mohammed Shahade. We've mentioned one, which is a digital recorder, correct?
Yes.
Is there some type of device that could have been simply put inside Shahade's phone?
Well, you don't put it inside the phone. There's it's a cup that you can attach into the outside of the phone that works just fine. And you can, anytime the phone rings, press that record button, and you can hear it's like you're talking to the person. And you instruct them how to do it. And when they terminate the phone call, press the off button. It's just that simple.
And then what should Detective Marino have told Mohammed Shahade in terms of documenting any phone calls that he did make to Dalia DiPolito?
Well, if he made phone calls to her after, you know, and my direction is that he shouldn't have made any phone calls, but if he made any phone calls to her, that should have been documented and recorded as well.
And similarly, Marino should have given Shahade a recording device in case there were a few phone calls from Dalia Dippolito to Mohammed Shahade, correct?
Correct.
Well, what should Marino have told Shahade to do if Dalia called Mohammed?
If Dalia had called Muhammad, he should have, when the phone rang, you press that record button, and so you don't be guessing or saying, hold on for a minute, and then press the button. When the phone rings, you press the button, and it's recorded, and when the call is finished, you press the stop button. And then you put the date, the time the call came through, and I should say a little bit further, the length of the call. If it's 5 seconds or 2 minutes or whatever it is, and this could be estimated because it will be corroborated by phone records, and that should be documented as well.
Are you aware of any phone calls that Mohammed Shahade made to Dalia Dippolito? Let me ask you, withdraw that question. Have you seen any evidence in this case that Mohammed Shahade voluntarily made phone calls to Dalia Dippolito?
The calls that I heard, which were controlled calls, were at the behest of the department where the phone calls were made.
And again, is that an issue for you?
Yes, I mean, again, you're initiating something that should be initiated the other way. The suspect or that's involved in these type of cases or any type of case should be initiating the contact, not the other way around.
Now, have you seen any evidence in this case or heard any phone call recording that Dalia Dippolito called Mohammed Shahade and said, I want to meet you on August 1st, 2009?
I haven't heard any phone calls like that.
Now let's move to the August 1st, 2009. You're familiar with, there was a videotape
Yes.
encounter between Mohammed Shahade and Dalia Dippolito. You
Yeah, I
familiar
believe
with
that was at a gas station, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Have you, well, let me ask you this. I want you to assume this fact as truthful, that prior to Mohammed Shahade meeting Dalia Dippolito on August 1st, 2009, that nobody at the Boynton Beach Police Department took everything out of Shahade's pocket before he went to meet with her. You have a problem with that?
Yes.
Why?
Anytime you work with an or a former working with you, and you're going and they're going to meet with a suspect or suspects, you don't know what is going to be transferred from one person to another. So you want to search that person being the informant, to see what he or she has on them. If there's money, you keep that money in their safekeeping for them. But you want to make sure what they have, if there's any contraband that they have that's taken from them, and they go in there clean. And if there's anything that's obtained from the suspect, then those items or that contraband, whatever it is taken by the managing detective and is documented and is booked into evidence. And that's how that's done. Because you don't want to get stuff commingled. You don't want stuff to say, well, get to court, well, I didn't give him that. When you know that you have sanitized that informant, and to the point so that anything that he or she has is a result of that meeting, and that's very important.
Have you seen any evidence in this case that the Boynton Beach Police Department booked into evidence any money that Dalia Dippolito allegedly gave to Mohammed Shahade?
I didn't see that.
Have you seen any photographs taken by anybody at the Boynton Beach Police Department of any dollar bills that Dalia Dippolito allegedly gave to Mohammed Shahade?
I didn't see that.
Have you seen any documentation in this case reflecting testing, DNA testing done by the Boynton Beach Police Department on any money that Mohammed Shahade alleges that he received from Dalia Dippolito on August 1, 2009?
I didn't see that.
Should it have been done?
It should have been done. You document what was received. You document, you photographically document the bills both front and back. You book that money into evidence, and it's there until the case is adjudicated. Also, forensically, the bill should have been examined to show that the suspect or suspects had custody and control of the items that you're looking at. And when the counsel said about DNA, you have that. The question could be, so well, a lot of people handle the money. You may get multiple findings of the DNA, but you may get profiles showing the person's profile on that money. So again, it's important that everything has to be corroborated. Even though you have this videotaped, you don't know if a person has not been searched, you don't know if that money that you've seen transferred is the same money that person is giving. And so you've got to control the situation. You've got to control the investigation, and you still have to corroborate or confirm.
And tell the jury the difference between the DNA testing of the money versus the fingerprint analysis.
Well, you have fingerprint analysis. You call the scientist in. You tell them what you want, and the scientist can tell you, well, look, it may or may not get fingerprints on that, so we do a test on it and see what we come up with. You may get a mixture in DNA. We do a test to see what we come up with, and we get a profile. And then once you get those mixtures, then you cause certain things to be done, like buccal swabs, to make sure to confirm that the persons that were involved, their profile is there. When I say buccal swab, where you swab the cheeks, and when the suspect is finally in custody, those things are obtained through court order as well. And then you do all that confirmation, and then when you get to court, the state's attorney should have a solid case in that particular aspect of the investigation, where the defense can't look at it and poke holes in it.
Well, if DNA testing was done on the money in this case, wouldn't that be a better shot at trying to identify where the money came from?
It would.
We didn't have any of that done here, right?
No.
Now, let's keep moving forward. We just talked about this video footage between Mohammed Shahade and Dalia Dippolito. By the way, is it important at all that the Boynton Beach Police Department never told Mohammed Shahade that his vehicle was wired for video footage?
They should have told him.
Now, I want you to assume the next fact is truthful, that we'll be able to prove in this case that there were some phone calls made by Mohammed Shahade to Dalia Dippolito. We don't have the recordings for those. After that first encounter at the gas station, but before she meets then with a gentleman named Witty Jean. Wouldn't it be important to have the recordings of those phone conversations?
It would.
Just so the jury is clear, Mohammed Shahade was not the alleged hitman, correct?
No.
He was a friend.
Yes.
And in this investigation, he was an unwilling confidential informant, right?
Correct.
Right. But Mohammed Shahade was not the guy who was allegedly supposed to go out and pull a trigger on a gun, correct?
That's correct.
He's one step removed from the alleged hitman, right?
That's my understanding, yes.
So now we move to, well, before we get to the August 3rd encounter between Dalia Dippolito and Witty Jean, tell the jury why it would be important to have the audio of any phone calls made between August 1st and August 3rd when Ms. Dippolito met with Witty Jean.
Well, excuse me, I would want to know what she was stating, if she was planning to meet with this, or the information was being provided to her to meet. If she's not coming up with this information or this idea or being the initiator of all these of this plan, then to me that would be problematic, because now somebody's talking to her, giving her an idea to do something where the information should be coming from her if they intend to file these type of charges on her. So they should be monitored. And again, and I can't overemphasize this enough, the state's attorney should have been involved with this from the very beginning, embedded in this investigation, and made sure that all these legal T's and legal I's were dotted. I don't know if this is a vertical prosecution. And when I say a vertical prosecution, I don't mean the person, the attorney, the state's attorney who files this sees the case all the way through. But the thing is that those things should have been done.
Should Mohammed Shahade have been making any phone calls to Dalia Dippolito between August 1st and August 3rd, 2009?
No.
Before I get to the August 3rd, 2009 encounter between Witty Jean and Dalia Dippolito, I wanted to ask you about another fact, if we are able to prove this. If Mohammed Shahade comes in here this afternoon and testifies under oath that Detective Alex Marino told him we have a 72-hour window to get this task accomplished, would you be critical of the fact that Marino is placing a 72-hour limit on this investigation?
Yes.
Why so?
You don't put time limits on an investigation. An investigation is an investigation. Sometimes it may take 5 days. Sometimes it may take 5 months. Sometimes it may take over a year to do an investigation. So you follow where the investigation leads, and you don't put no time constraints on that. That's something that you do not do.
Well, does the fact that Detective Marino is telling Shahade, if we're able to prove it, that there's a 72-hour window, does that in some way suggest some type of ulterior motivation on Marino's part?
Well, it suggests that it will cause an uncooperative informant to further enhance something that would be enhanced, and would further, in my opinion, taint the totality of this investigation.
Now, moving forward to August 3rd, 2009, if we're able to prove in this case as truthful that Witty Jean, again, he's the undercover hit guy employed by Boynton Beach PD, that he is initiating now phone calls to Dalia Dippolito to get her to meet him, would you be critical of that?
I would, unless she's initiated the phone calls to him, and they had that type of arrangement. But yes, I'd be critical of that. Yes.
Well, should Witty Jean have been initiating phone calls to Dalia Dippolito?
No.
Okay, why not?
Again, Ms. Dippolito should have, if it was taking the initiative for the contact, not the other way around. Again, you don't put the idea in somebody else's head to do something that could cause an arrest. The thing is that if this was the case, if she was initiating the contacts, then those contacts should have been recorded, and the police should not have been initiating the contacts, and the informant should not have been initiating the contacts. You wait for the calls to come in, and you develop your case from there.
I'm sure Mr. Williams will bring to your attention that there were a few phone calls that Dahlia Dippolito made to, it was either Mohammed Shahade or Witty Jean. But if in fact Ms. Dippolito placed some phone calls, a few phone calls, shouldn't those phone calls have been recorded?
Most definitely.
And why should those have been recorded?
Again, it goes to the case. If she's calling, making arrangements for a hit, or then that should have been recorded. Otherwise, it's just speculative as to what she called, why she called, and what was stated. And that should have been documented and for the case.
Well, I think there was a phone call that Ms. Dippolito made to Witty Jean, and she did say, well, I will eventually meet you at this location. Is that enough in this case?
No.
There's got to be more conduct, right?
It has to be conduct. And they,
Ever heard that phrase, actions speak louder than words?
You got the approach on that?
Mr. Williams, you ever heard that phrase, actions speak louder than words?
I have.
In an undercover investigation on an alleged murder for hire plot, the actions of the suspect need to mirror the words, right?
That's correct.
I want you to assume this fact is truthful. Witty Jean calls Dahlia Dippolito, and he says the following: I want you to bring your key to the house. I want you to bring $3,000. I want you to bring a picture of your husband. And I need the alarm code number. You with me?
I'm with you.
I want you to further assume as truthful that Dahlia Dippolito, she does meet Witty Jean. She doesn't bring a key to the house. She doesn't bring any money. She doesn't bring a picture of her husband, and doesn't provide the alarm code to Witty Jean. You with me?
I'm with you.
What's the significance of those facts if proven truthful?
Well,
Approach.
Mr. Williams,
Yes.
did you see any evidence that Ms. Dippolito brought a key to meet Witty Jean?
I didn't see no evidence of that, no.
And when you watched the video, did Ms. Dippolito give any money to Witty Jean?
No.
And back to that video with Mohammed Shahade, there was no evidence in that video of even an amount of money that was exchanged, right?
No.
And we don't know whether that money was for anything other than Ms. Dippolito paying Shahade a loan or for personal use, correct?
Correct.
And did you see in the video Ms. Dippolito giving a picture of her husband to Witty Jean?
No.
And did you hear her say she was caught off guard?
I believe she said something to that extent.
And in reviewing the video between Witty Jean and Dahlia Dippolito, it's true that she never even mentioned the word murder or kill, correct?
I didn't hear that.
And you said you reviewed Whitty Jean's deposition transcript, correct?
Yes.
Right. And I want you to assume this fact is truthful, that Whitty Jean said that the reason why he was asking Ms. DiPolito to provide the key, the $3,000, the picture, the alarm code, was to see how far she would go to facilitate the crime.
Okay, and the question? I'm sorry.
I'm not going to ask the next question. I just want to verify that you saw that evidence in this case, right?
Yes.
In other words, all I'm trying to establish, I'm not going to ask you a follow-up question pursuant to the court's order, but what I want to establish is what Whitty Jean has testified to as evidence in this case, that his reason for asking DiPolito for the key, the $3,000, the picture of her husband, and the alarm code was to see how far she would go to facilitate. You saw that, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Approach.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
In reviewing the videotape of the encounter between Ms. DiPolito and Whitty Jean, in looking at that, do you believe that any policies and procedures of the Boynton Beach Police Department and nationwide were violated?
Well, the meeting, well, I have concerns about the meeting that preceded the meeting with the undercover officer, and that may spill off into that.
Right, so leading up, so let me ask you differently. So all the facts you know in this case, of the information you have leading up to the meeting between Whitty Jean and Dahlia DiPolito that was videotaped at CVS, do you have any opinions as to whether the Boynton Beach PD did anything improper?
Well, if I can only answer that question by answering the meeting that took place just prior to that meeting with the undercover officer, where the
You're talking about the Chili's?
yes.
Okay, so what? So there was a meeting that took place at Chili's between Dahlia DiPolito and Mr. Shahade, correct?
That's correct.
And I want you to assume as truthful in this case that Mr. Shahade will come in here this afternoon and tell the jury under oath that he was 100% sure that he was wired before he went into the Chili's restaurant. You with me?
I'm with you.
And then I also want you to assume as truthful the fact that Mr. Shahade comes out of the Chili's restaurant and he overhears some Boynton police officers laughing and reciting some of what was discussed between Shahade and Ms. DiPolito inside Chili's restaurant. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Right. Would you have any criticism of the Boynton Beach PD violating policies and procedures with that?
I do. I've asked you, counsel, as well, and you told me that there was no recording of that from the police department. And if there was no recording and Mr. Shahade will testify and admits under oath that there was a recording, well, then I have a problem with that. In that, if there's a recording, it should have been turned over, and if it was destroyed, then you have, in my opinion, an obstruction of justice. And
Sustained. Disregard the last answer.
Okay. Go ahead. What else?
yeah, and it's they should have been memorialized. The recording should have been booked, and it should have been turned over to the defense via the prosecution. If it wasn't recorded, then I don't know what was going on during that alleged 45-minute meeting with the informant and Ms. DiPolito, and I don't know whether she was coerced or what the situation was to meet with the undercover officer, and that should have been, if it was recorded, should have been turned over, And if it was destroyed, then it was against department policies and procedure to destroy evidence.
Why do you want to have the recording of the 45-minute conversation that took place between Dahlia and Muhammad?
Well, number one, anytime you have a meeting like that, and the officers, I mean, and the detectives that handling the case know about this, they should have operatives. When I say operatives, officers in the restaurant. I'm not going to get into undercover operations because I don't want to compromise the department. But there should have been operatives in the restaurant, and the informant should have been wired, and it should have been monitored as to what was going on to ensure that number one, Mr. DiPolito wasn't coerced into meeting with the undercover officer to further this investigation.
You want to eliminate any speculation?
That's correct.
So even if Muhammad Shahadi comes in here this afternoon and he says, oh, I wasn't trying to pressure her, does that change your opinion at all as to whether we should have that actual audio recording?
It wouldn't change my opinion at all.
Tell me why.
Because we had nothing to corroborate that. As his word against, is he said, she said, or he said, he said.
That's the best ultimate evidence, right?
It is.
Do you believe it's appropriate for Boynton Beach police officers to be laughing about Ms. DiPolito ordering a meal for her husband at the Chili's restaurant?
This is a very serious investigation. You know, there's gallow humor within law enforcement. Sometimes it's inappropriate, and you know, they should have kept it professional, and proceeded on with the investigation.
Let me ask you a little bit more about Witty Jean. He testified yesterday, I believe it was, that he had an initial briefing. We only had one briefing with the Boynton Beach Police Department, and I was able to refresh his memory that the total amount of time of the briefing was 5 to 10 minutes. Would you be critical of that?
Yes, it should have been. It should have been a lengthy briefing. He should have known what was going on in the investigation. He should have had a good handle on what was going on up to that point, so he would know how to handle and do what he needed to do in that aspect of the investigation. There's officer safety issues as well.
There's what?
Officer safety issues as well that has to be talked about and put into place. So it's something like that. It's not a 5 to 10 minute briefing. It's a lengthy briefing.
Well, do you believe that policies and procedures of the Boynton Beach PD would have required the lead sergeant, Mr. Sheridan, to communicate to Witty Jean that there was a confidential informant involved?
Yes, the picture should have been shown to him. Pictures of the person that he was supposed to meet with, Ms. DiPolito, should have been shown to him. All the officers in place should have known who the undercover officer was, so there'd be no mistakes out there in the field. And so all those things should have been in play.
Well, the point I'm getting at is Witty Jean testified he didn't know anything about the confidential informant, Muhammad Shahadi. Is that an important fact?
It is an important fact.
And in fact, Witty Jean said he didn't know anything at all about what the confidential informant had spoken to with Ms. DiPolito leading up to the encounter at the CVS pharmacy. Is that an important fact?
Oh, that's important.
Why is that important?
Well, number one, again, it goes down to the issue of officer safety. Number one, you don't know who's who and what's going to happen out there in an operation. If there is an informant involved, you want to know who is out there. You don't know if he's by the car, if he's in the car, if he's in the car next to him. You want to know who's at play, and all those things are very, very important to know what's going on. And the undercover officer should have been a thorough briefing on that.
wasn't it also important for Woody Jean to know what has been discussed between the confidential informant and Ms. DiPolito?
Yes.
And shouldn't the Boynton Beach PD have communicated to Woody Jean what Mohammed Shahade and Dahlia DiPolito discussed inside the Chili's restaurant for 45 minutes?
Yes, if that was recorded, he should have known. Well,
Let's assume
no, but,
that was
let me,
recorded.
okay.
Let's assume there was a recording of that 45-minute Chili's encounter between Dahlia and Mohammed. Should the substance and the content of that audio, have been communicated to Woody Jean before he meets with Ms. DiPolito at the CVS?
They met right after that meeting, so there's been some way that, there's some way they could have wired and monitored so that the undercover officer could hear what the meeting was about, so that he wouldn't be caught flat-footed. Now, if there was a break in between, then there can be some briefing, but there was not a break from my understanding of the cases. There was not a break. They met after that. They went to, I think, across the street to CVS, where they met with him, and that's when the meeting happened. So they should have figured out some way for the undercover officer to hear in real time what was going on.
Now, you saw the video between Dahlia and Woody Jean, correct?
I did.
Right now, if we're able to prove to the jury as truthful in this case through the video and what was discussed, that there was a point early on where Ms. DiPolito was showing some reluctance, and Woody Jean says, "I had to get her warmed up to me." Do you have an opinion as to whether at that point in time Woody Jean should have aborted the interview?
That's something that, it's to the operator's discretion. I would leave it to him.
Well, should an undercover hitman be trying to encourage a suspect to give vital information?
Well, I wouldn't use the term encourage, but make them. If I was operating, if I was in undercover capacity, I would try to make the person feel comfortable. That's what I would do.
Should the undercover hitman be initiating everything about how a murder is going to go down?
Objection outside the scope.
I'll withdraw it, Your Honor. There has been some evidence in the case. The Boynton Beach Police Department has generated some evidence about an alleged malfunction of the wiring of Mohammed Shahade at the Chili's restaurant. If I'm able to prove as truthful that former Sergeant Frank Ranzi testified that there was enough time to go and get another recording device that functioned, and Sergeant Sheridan told him, "It's my effing investigation and I'm not going to do that." Would you be critical of that?
I would.
And why would you be critical of that?
If the equipment wasn't functioning properly, the meeting should have been aborted, and they should have, there's a lot of mutual aid around here. They should have gotten some equipment from another agency and then set up the meeting at another time when you had equipment that was working.
If the Boynton Beach Police Department believed on August 1st, 2009, that Dahlia DiPolito wanted to kill her husband, Mike DiPolito, do you have an opinion as to whether, pursuant to policies and procedures, the Boynton Beach Police Department should have placed surveillance at that moment on Dahlia DiPolito?
Surveillance should have been placed on her, yes.
And at some point in time, what's the purpose of having surveillance placed on Dahlia Dippolito?
Well, number one, to see to document her goings and comings. Number two, I would be concerned also about the alleged victim in this particular case, and having ran surveillance units or caused surveillance units to be done in my investigations in the past. I would want both the victim and the suspect monitored for goings and comings, and that'll be important to my investigation, and also to the safety of the alleged victim.
And you were reading my mind. I wanted to ask you whether, in your opinion, policies and procedures would have required Boynton Beach PD, no coffee this morning, to have contacted Mike Dippolito to let him know that his wife's going to kill him.
Again, that's a call. I don't know if I would have contacted him. I would have had him monitored under surveillance, but I would have it would have been a hard surveillance on Ms. Dippolito to see where her goings and comings, who she was in contact with, who she was calling, monitoring her phone calls, and things of that nature. So it would have been a hard surveillance on her.
But if a police department truly believes that a suspect's going to kill a husband, at some point in time, shouldn't the police department abort the investigation, contact the suspect, and make an arrest?
Well, if you get to the point where you have enough, again, if you have enough to make the arrest for solicitation, then you make that arrest, and then you contact the victim and let them know what's going on, why his wife is not coming home, and so on and so forth, and then you do that and make that documentation in your investigation.
And Dahlia Dippolito wasn't arrested after the August 1st, 2009 encounter with Mohammed Shahadi, was she?
No.
She wasn't arrested on August 3rd after the encounter with at CVS with Whitty Jean, was she?
No.
And in fact, I think you saw some evidence in this case that 2 days go by, and then on August 5th, there is what's called a staged crime scene set up, correct?
Yes.
Before I get to the staged crime scene on August 5, 2009, you saw that Whitty Jean had initiated some phone calls to Dahlia Dippolito on August 4th, 2009, correct?
I believe so, yes.
So that's the day after the meeting at CVS, correct?
Yes.
Now, are you familiar with what transpired with the staged crime scene?
I'm familiar with what I seen on the videotape. They staged the murder of the alleged murder of Mike Dippolito, and then they called Miss Dippolito, who was at the gym at that time, and they called her to come back home, and she came back home, and then she was confronted by police officers at her residence.
Are you critical of the staged crime scene?
I am. It didn't need to go that far.
Why not?
It was for publication and in the media, and you don't publish a serious investigation like this. You do your investigation, and you make your arrest if it needs to be made, and that U.S. State Attorney do what they need to do.
May I approach?
Yes.
I'd like to show you what's been moved into evidence as Defense Exhibit 7. Pardon me? It's in evidence. It's the draft. It's 2009. Take a moment, look at Exhibit 7, please.
Yes.
Yeah, you've seen Exhibit 7, right?
I have.
And this is a directive. Tell the jury again what a directive is.
Directive is an order, normally from the chief of police, who at this time was Matthew Imler, to the officers, and is dealing with informants.
And it deals with the control of informants, right?
Yes.
All right, and based on the evidence you've seen in this case, do you have any criticism of Detective Marino as to whether he complied with this directive in controlling Mohammed Shahade?
Wait a minute, approach for just a second.
He should have been deactivated. So the thing is that he was in control, and you had a reluctant an informant that did not want to be involved, and he should have been deactivated.
You want to break it?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I was just looking for a convenient time to break for lunch, so we'll go ahead and do that at this time. I hate to give you an odd time. Let's just say like 1:25. I know that's odd instead of 1:30, but just get started at 1:25. Gives you about an hour and 20 minutes or so for lunch. Please do not discuss the case. Please do not do any research. Please do not listen to or read any news accounts of the trial. Have a pleasant lunch. We'll see you back here at 1:25. All right, Mr. Williams, just to remind you, you're under oath. You shouldn't discuss your testimony with anyone over the break. And just as you're going out, I don't know whether you're going to go out with counsel or not, just make sure you don't commingle with the jurors. They're being led down to the elevator. Just give them a chance to clear before you go, if you would. All right, thank you. Okay, we're in recess.
Thank you, Your Honor.